everybody. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. Actually, it isn't regular. We should have met last week, but we were at a conference. It's 5 p.m., Wednesday, April 26, 2023, and we're going to stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Randy, please.
Trustee Kidda?
Here.
Trustee Winslow?
Present.
Trustee Everson?
Here.
Trustee Marks?
Present.
Treasurer Johnson?
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Kangas, our attorney Roger Zappa, our assessor Dulcie Ranta is here, and our superintendent of public works Lenny Bodinas is on Zoom.
Thank you. Well, we have no public, so we can skip that one. Board member comment. So tonight's consent agenda consists of approval of regular meeting minutes of April 5th, 2023. We have bills payable in the amount of $455,307.23. Reports, election commission minutes of April 5th, and the Sheriff's Department activity report of March of 2023. We also have the abbreviated packet for the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority's 4/19/23 meeting. I did attend that one. Just a couple things to point out from their packet. There's going to be a lot of demolition material in the landfill this year. If you think about all of the buildings that are going to come down. So it's just all that more important for everybody to recycle. Just an extra little reminder. Don't put the blue bucket or whatever you want to call it, trash container out if it's less than half full. That's going to be your paper, newspaper, tin cans, plastic. And then we've got first Wednesday glass drop off at North Country Disposal. They are also getting ready for their wastewater treatment plant facility construction. That's a $3.8 million project they're working on. So there'll be more to follow on that. I did include some of their annual report, which was kind of interesting too. Also, the UPCO notice of hearing, they want another rate increase. Peter White Public Library Board meeting minutes, Tuesday, April 18th, and then the March 2023 financial statement.
Move to accept the agenda.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And we just need approval of the remainder.
I move to accept the regular agenda as presented.
Or.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I'm not aware of any conflicts of interest with this agenda. So our first item up is going to be a report from our assessor, Dulcie Ranta. She did an outstanding job and put a lot of time in this, and we talked an hour and a half besides, putting it together. So we hope this is really great information. I think it will be for the public, and it's kind of designed that if somebody needs to have the information, we can call this back up. It'll be, on record, and we can use it as a template and just update it next year with new numbers. She'll also come back in July with her report. We're going to talk a little bit more about assessing and how that works. So take it away, Ms. Czar.
Well, thank you, Township Board. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come and give you my quarterly update. There's been a lot of things happening in the assessing world, a lot of mandates and different items that change yearly based upon the State Tax Commission and different laws when they're passed. That can go anywhere from implementing exemption programs to decisions from the Michigan Tax Tribunal that can become a binding guide as to how we handle certain assessments. But I just wanted to also give you a little background. When I sat down to speak with Supervisor Durant, we wanted to approach this as more of a cause and effect, how this works together. So you hear us talk a lot of different topics, and for you to feel comfortable as to how the process goes and where the information ends up, and then ultimately how it impacts you when you're collecting millages and how those then get dispersed. So first off, The very first slide, actually, Mr. Rittari, I'm not very good with technology. Would you mind, please, just forwarding?
I can do that.
I'm so sorry. Sometimes I have to have my stepsons that are more technologically advanced program some of the stuff, so.
Just tell me next slide
I
and
will,
I'll
I
move
appreciate
it.
it, thank you. So what I wanted to share with the board, because we're always interested in what's our rate of growth? Where are we fitting in? Are we seeing increases? How much are we impacted? So I wanted to start, the first part of the slide is addressing where we ended up post-certified March border review. So that was after the public and property owners received their change of assessment notice that opens up their opportunity to be heard by our local border review if they have anything they wish to protest or have us consider as the township or the border review as to why my assessment as the assessor could be maybe incorrect and it needs to be reviewed. That is the proper procedure. So when we finalize out our border review, these are our numbers to where we stated our assessed value would be. Quick refresher, assessed value represents 50% of what we consider to be true cash value. So if we're looking at it, I wanted to break it down because prior boards have always asked our department, how much is represented by a commercial class? How much does our industrial class bring in? Where are we at with our residential properties? And then also personal property, which is the valuation that's determined on self-reported personal property statements from businesses to reflect the amount of their assets necessary to operate their business. It can include shelving, computers, anything that it would be necessary that's outside of the brick and mortar of the building. That's just to give you a quick idea of what we're referring to for personal property. So what you will see is we ended out our total assessed value for 2023 at $401,909,500. Now, that's showing, and I apologize, I pulled a muscle in my back, so if I'm grimacing, it's not anything you guys are doing, it hurts. So I wanted to then give you an idea, because most important for a township board is to understand where our values come in on taxable value. Because as you know, taxable value is what generates the amount a tax bill will calculate to. So when we look on the bottom portion of that slide, I broke it down by commercial, industrial, residential, and personal property there as well. So we ended March border review with a certified taxable value of $303,632,754. We have been very fortunate to be in a very strong market within our jurisdiction. We're still considered one of the premier townships to have people join our community, want to become residents, and it's something that we should take a lot of pride in because the numbers don't lie. When you see what people are paying for properties and where our values have grown to, it's actually quite remarkable. Next slide, please. So we have always maintained what we call an SEV comparison chart. We started to compile this information back in 1984 and have always added the values as we finalize out March border review. SEV is majority of the time going to be the same thing as assessed value. What SEV means is that we have went through the final processes within the state. The State Tax Commission has finalized out state equalization and confirm our local values. So when we refer to assessed value, that's us as a local unit. You then in April go through county equalization, which would be called county equalized values. And then in the month of May, which we're approaching, is when the SEV will be determined. We're not aware of any factors, so we're very comfortable to say our assessed values become our state equalized values. So what you will see in there, I tried to make sure it was a little bit easier to see by the colors. It's basically the information that I had previously sent out as the agenda that shows every year, but I figured a graphic would definitely show you where we're seeing how much our totals have increased since we started keeping track. Next slide, please. So what does this mean? How does this impact you as the financial managers and budget policymakers for the township and our residents? We saw in Marquette Township a 5.42 increase in our taxable values over our certified 2022 taxable value rates. Proposal A created a cap on taxable values, which means your taxable value will not increase over the rate of inflation, or 5%, whichever is less. This is the very first year since 1994 that the cap and taxable value was created, that our inflation rate was actually 7.9%. So this is the very first time we're in new territory that we actually had the 5% cap kick in by state law. So if you're wondering where the additional little percentage is coming from, would be from all the activity on our sales. So when we talk about the uncapping, it means the year after a transfer in ownership. So any property that was bought between January 1 of 2022 to December 31st of 2022 would be potentially subject to an uncapping event. So we would see our taxable values go to the current assessed. That is not something our local board of review has any authority. That is state law. So when we are talking about our increases, it can sometimes be more than just the cap that's allowable by Proposal A for the inflation rate. We have been trying to be very proactive to explain to a lot of our taxpayers. And when I say we, I'm talking about assessors across the state as we are all communicating, that with the inflation rate not looking to show any signs of slowing down, that the mechanism that generates what our inflation rate would be, we're just kind of advising everybody to expect another 5% the next year because of the fact that it's not exactly slowing down and we're still seeing large rates of inflation. Next slide, please. How does this, so I wanted, after talking with Lynn, our Supervisor Durant, I wanted to take the time to put her vision of the history and how this all impacts us, because we always try to maintain our taxable value because that's what generates your tax revenues. So we had long discussions about how these MTT, which is for Michigan Tax Tribunal decisions, on taxable value, how does that impact us as a community and as a state? So I wanted to just kind of put something in context that would be very Marquette Township appropriate. And so we decided to use the road millage. And we use the road millage because, as you recall, in our public or anybody that sees this presentation knows that we went to the voters of Marquette Township and asked them to support a 1.5 mil increase to their tax base to then provide a funding mechanism to maintain and to do repairs to some of our roads. As you are aware as a township board, that was also, we went out on a bond in order to get the financing necessary. That bond payment was directly tied to the revenue generated off that 1.5 mils. So let's talk about what would end up happening. So next slide. So I put together, please, a sample bill. Let's say I have a taxable value of $100,000, and I used a rounded millage rate saying we have 48.5 mils. This would be a non-principal residence exemption home. This would be like the maximum you would pay if you were not living in your home and calling it your primary residence. The calculation would take that $100,000 of taxable value times the millage rate, and then a mill represents 1/1000th of a dollar, so that's why we're dividing it by 1,000, which means on that particular sample property, it would be generating property taxes of $4,850. Now, we will cover this later in the presentation, but I would like to just put a note out here now. That is not all retained by Marquette Township. We collect that taxes and then we distribute to the other taxing jurisdictions that also levy taxes within our community. But we will cover that on the last slide. So on the next slide, please. How does the MTT decisions on taxable value impact our road millage and our obligation to the bonds that we took out as a township for our road project? I have included on the next slide, this is an example of just one big box dark store MTT decision that happened here in Marquette Township. as you will see, the blue line represents what we call our original taxable value. So this would have been the year after completion when the project was considered 100% complete. We had a taxable value of just over $5 million on that property. The tax tribunal sided with the taxpayer and it lowered that taxable value, which is represented in the orange, to just a little over $2 million. Now, the importance of what Supervisor Durant wanted us to be able to provide a visual for is there's I believe, maybe a misconception that that's just a one-year break. But with Proposal A, once that taxable value has been lowered, it is then capped, and it also will only grow by the rate of inflation unless it's a year following a transfer in ownership. So I wanted to kind of give you a real big snapshot of the disparity between where we thought we were being able to project our revenues and when we committed to different projects at one point, what revenue we felt was coming in versus the reality of what one major big box appeal did to our taxable value base. And this is just one parcel. So if we were looking then on the next slide, please, Randy. I wanted to break this down for you to kind of give you a synopsis of what that other slide was telling you. So what I'm giving you are the facts of the total compounding taxable value for the big box without a Michigan Tax Tribunal decision. If we were looking at the years from 2010 of the original decision to where we would be today in 2023, our taxable value on that big box should have been $80,596,000. So you figure $5 million 1 year plus then that original $5 million on top of the CPI. We're looking at how that total would be for that entire 13 years. If we were applying our 1.5 millage rate that we went out to our voters within Marquette Township and asked them to approve for us so we could do our road project, would have generated an approximate $120,894 in tax revenues to pay back our bonds. Instead, this is where we're at. After the Michigan Tax Tribunal decision, the reduced compounded taxable value for that same 13 years is only $27,558,000. Because on average, if you looked, when you're looking through the PowerPoint a little closer, you'll see that once we had that huge reduction, and you saw just what 2% is on a reduced amount, there's a drastic impact on your revenues that you guys are expected to then still meet all of your promises, debts, and expectations on projects. So the tax revenue for the road fund that we are currently experiencing would be based on $27 million for those 13 years, and that would have generated just $41,337. Real quick math, if I'm eyeballing it, it's just shy of $80,000 that we are shy from one big box decision since the moment we took out those bonds, asked our taxpayers to back us, and voted for that millage to where we're at today. So we have had to find the money. You guys have been being very well, good at budgeting for that, but that's one big box appeal. And as you guys know from the history of being on this township board, we've had probably 8. But I didn't want to come here to preach. I just wanted to come here and give you guys, here's some numbers. This is the impact. This is why we are wanting everybody to contract their legislators. Let's get this fixed. Let's move forward because it impacts everything you do as a township board and the promises you made to your taxpayers and millage requests. So on the very last slide, Supervisor Durant had asked me to try to give you an idea of what you expect to find in the mail from our office and then how that information moves forward to what an actual tax bill does. So the very first part is it's called a notice of assessment for taxable value and property classification. We refer to this as Form 4400. And you'll see at the very top it says this is not a tax bill. This is the notification to the property owner that they receive at the end of February, but it's required to be postmarked 14 days before the first set of March Board of Review hearings. On this particular form, it will typically, I whited it out because I didn't want to have a real site-specific parcel, but it would have the the parcel number, it would have the property address, which is in that upper right-hand corner. And then you'll see in the next block below, it would have the owner's name, their address, where we're mailing it. To the block to the right lets us know and lets the property owner know, do we have your information? Are you qualifying for a principal residence exemption? Do you qualify for a qualified agricultural property? Anything that would exempt you from certain millages that would be collected during tax bills. The other item then includes like the legal description. And then we have what we call the property is classified as. So on the prior screen, how I said we have commercial property, we have industrial property, we have residential property. This is our way of classifying the property and how it's used. So when we're saying 401, that's meaning it's a residential parcel that has an improvement on it. A home, a camp, a garage, something that is showing that there's an improvement. So the very next little box, and this is what becomes real important and informational to each taxpayer, is we included this year the box that says the change in taxable value will increase/decrease your tax bill for the 2023 year by a dollar amount. Because we have found over the years that that was the one unknown that when people were looking at the form, they would see that we're saying the taxable value increased by $3,764. The form's confusing, and it would give people the opinion that their property taxes were going up that dollar amount. So we opted to include that box, so then you can see my tax dollars are going up this amount. This is required to show that we are using the proper rate of inflation multiplier that is required by Proposal A. And you will see that that is on right below the box in number 6. That's how you know we sent out our notices correctly, because it reads right there, the 2023 inflation rate multiplier is 1.05. We felt it would be very helpful. I'm going to ask that you kind of look here under this block here, where we're talking about 2022's year, because that was the taxes that have been the most recently collected. So if we look there, there's a taxable value of $75,288. If you look on the right side of your screen, you'll see that that is a sample tax bill for the same parcel. If you are looking at the very top 1/3 of that sheet, you'll see where it says that 100. That represents how much they're receiving for a principal residence exemption. Our forms, when they are mailed to the property owner, actually have a lot of titles on that. I didn't have access to that because when I printed out the computer, it doesn't have those headings. Then the next is saying what tax season it's for. It's indicating it's for the 2022 winter. The school code is at 52,170. But you see the next item, it's saying 145,500. That's their assessed value. Then we're talking the 75,288. Do you see how the forms feed into each other and give us an idea then of what the property taxes would be? So when we've been since I've been talking and trying to impress upon the Township Board and anybody listening to this presentation, when we talk about the big box appeals and we talk about how much the reduction in taxable value, it's not just a Marquette Township issue. This is something that impacts any taxing jurisdiction that levies millage in, for example, Marquette County, the Marquette Elger Regional Education Service, that used to be formerly known as the Intermediate School District. So when you're looking at a tax bill, we have the county programs. We don't levy those. Marquette County does. However, they go to the voters and request approval. So when we have a reduction in our taxable value here at Marquette Township, it's also impacting those taxing jurisdictions because tax bills are generated on that taxable value. So right there, our big box decisions have lowered Marquette County's ability to receive the revenue that they were obligated for. Then if we look a little farther, our tax bills still read ISD, but that is the Marquette Elger Regional. They are impacted by the millages they've asked the voters in Marquette and Elger counties to pass. Then if we look at the Marquette area's public schools, because that is our school district, our school debt is impacted, and so are their sinking fund. So anytime that those have to come back for renewal, it's because they didn't receive the amount of tax revenues they had planned on because of a reduction in taxable value. So now, when you pay your tax bill to Marquette Township, if this was your tax bill and you wrote us a check for $1,297, we are the tax collecting entity. We deposit it. We do our disbursements every 2 weeks for everybody else that made their payment within that same 2-week window. But we are distributing a check to Marquette County to cover all those millages that we collected for. So that money leaves our tax collection account and goes to that taxing jurisdiction. Same for the ISD. We distribute that to them. And then also the Marquette area public schools. So if you're focusing on the bottom, the items that Marquette Township receives would be our general fund, our general operating, and that's 4.8 mils. Our library, which is voted in, but we distribute that as well. We retain our Fire Act 33, but that would then go into the budget for the fire department. Then our roads, we're now down, our millages have rolled back a little bit, but we retain that. The fire equipment and law enforcement. Heritage Trail gets distributed to Heritage Trail. So I get fired up about this, and I'm trying not to get fired up, but I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of that when you lose so much taxable value, it's no longer just a Marquette Township issue. It is anybody that levies a millage that comes to the voters and asks for approval. It impacts how they do business, it impacts what projects they can do, and it also impacts when they have to come back and ask for additional millages. I just want everybody to realize that this is not going to change without a legislative fix. And I know Supervisor Durant's been very active, been very trying to educate, but we also need other people to kind of step to that challenge a little bit and be, come on, let's get this fixed. I promised I wasn't going to get on my soapbox.
That was perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself.
So going forward, again, if there's anything that you would like to have us discuss as part of my quarterly report, please provide the information to Supervisor Durant, and we'll see what we can put together, and we'll move forward on anything as needed.
Thank you.
Any
Yeah.
questions for Dulcie?
I have one. You talked about uncapping these businesses if they sell.
Yes.
What are they uncapped to?
The current assessed value. So I'm still required by law to determine a 50% of true cash value. The only thing I'm limited to is making sure that the taxable value, when that is reduced, that becomes its cap. Now, I still feel that a lot of these businesses are still worth what the township had originally thought they were worth. We use the cost manual. Here's where you have 3 different approaches as to how we value any property. You have the sales comparison, you have the cost approach, and you also have an income approach. We have always preached and tried to educate everybody that an individual sale price does not create a market. We then have to have enough sales and able to tell where we're at with market sales. As you know, not too many of these big box properties sell within Marquette Township. So then we lie a little heavier on the State Tax Commission approved assessor's manual, which is our cost approach. And typically when we're doing mass appraisal, which is what we do as assessors, we don't typically get financials from companies. So one set of financials also does not create a market. So we do really rely on using the State Tax Commission's manual. And for me then, as your assessor, determining that assessed value, it's still a 156,000 square foot building. It's still made out of concrete. It still has all of the improvements, and therefore, in my humble opinion, it represents 50% of market. So my values would put that as a true cash value of at least 10 million, because that's where my numbers come in. However, that taxable value is capped. And until there's new construction or transfer in ownership, it'll always be at that reduced rate.
If it transfers ownership through sale of that, and it goes back to some other figure,
It'll go up to the higher,
then they can go back to tax
they
tribunal.
could.
Okay.
You know, and that's what I believe they're trying to find some type of a mechanism there to avoid that from happening. But again, until we receive changes in how we're doing it, we do rely on using the cost manual.
Okay. That's-
We'll talk about the cost manual next time. I asked her to bring it in when we go through the assessing side of it.
Okay.
And so that the public can understand that if you use, I've said this before, you know, you've got brick exterior, you've got 4 different pitches on your house, you've got cement driveway, you've got 9-foot ceilings, you've got triple case windows, you know, all those kinds of things in your construction, that's what's in her book. That's where those numbers come from. And the tribunal says, eh. So we'll talk about that next time.
Okay.
I said, bring the book in so everybody can see. It's a great big 3-ring binder. It tells you how many nails are in the house and how many whatever, you know. So, thank you, that was excellent.
Thank
you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Good. Now
Okay.
we can keep this.
Too much information.
It's a lot.
I know,
It
and
is.
I really tried to
I
not
know.
overdo it, but I get passionate, and so sometimes, you know, I come across a little strong, so I don't mean to, I've just,
Well, and it's
feel
not,
it's important.
it's not a simple issue. There's nothing simple about it. It's very complicated, which is why it's taken the legislature so long to deal with it, between that and the Chamber of Commerce.
and I didn't even realize how much our road fund millage was actually impacted until you asked me to put it together. It was kind of like a oof when I did it. I was really surprised at where the numbers ended up coming in and how much you guys are subsidizing that shortage because of just, then that was one big box appeal.
Yeah. Just one.
I have a question. Can the big box stores only go to the tax tribunal once?
Oh, I wish. No, they can go every year.
So they can go back all the
Yep.
time?
Yep.
So what prohibits, who decides who can go to the tax tribunal?
The
Can
property owner.
I go?
You could go. When you receive, here's the difference. When you are a classification of residential, you have to go through the local board of review. Commercial industrial no longer have to go through the local board of review. They can go right to the tax tribunal. So that legislative change happened in about 10 years ago, where previously they had to go through the local board of review, but they then eliminated that. And so we can't even have the discussions a lot of times until we're already being noticed that somebody has filed against us at the tribunal.
So where do vacation rentals by owner fall?
That would be residential?
It would still be
It'd
residential?
be residential. How it would impact a property owner is they would be potentially losing their ability to claim it as their primary residence. So they would lose the 18 mills. So again, on that particular one I showed you, I mean, 18 mills on a house. So are they going to give up potential rental of maybe 10,000 for that summer to pay 1,200 taxes? They'll be like, yeah, take my homestead.
Yep, but I'm asking, can they go to the tax tribunal as a business then?
Yes.
If they're vacation rental by
Yep.
owner? And that also includes all the apartment owners?
Yep. There is no, that is your right by state law, that you always have the ability to appeal. And depending on the classification, either you're going through the local board of review, and if you are not satisfied with the decision or the results from the local board of review, you still have the tax tribunal or as the small claims division of the tribunal. It depends on the value and contention, which court will then take over the authority of the case. There's no, you'd be taking away somebody's statutory rights to be able to protest as a taxpayer. So you can go as many times as you want. You know, there's no way for anybody to take away that right as a property owner.
Yeah, so apartment complexes,
Small apartments?
yeah, big ones, theaters, bowling alleys.
So how we determine a short-term rental being residential versus a commercial is it has to do, our administrative rules in assessment say if it's more than 4 units, it's then commercial. But if it's got less than 4 units, it's residential. Even though you're using it as a business, it's still being built as a residential code and could easily be converted back to a residential use. Yeah.
this could be quite interesting.
It could be.
Anything else?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Yep.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, here's my agenda. So now we're up to reports, unless this cut off. Fire department report's gonna be the next meeting. I did put the chief's report in your mailbox. He was out of commission last week, so you have that, and we'll have another report at the end of next month. Planning and zoning, do we have Jason on?
He is there, yep.
Okay. Can't see that small.
Hey, good evening. So we've received Longyear's preliminary PUD plan. There's a process that goes through, so right now it's been distributed to all of the regulatory agencies in the area per the zoning ordinance. The deadline on that is actually close of business today for those comments. And those will be transmitted back to the developer, and then they will have an opportunity to provide any revisions that they desire based on the comments that have been received. So there'll be another period of 15 days, and then the planning commission will get their first crack at it. Likely they'll see it for the first time in the second meeting in May, and then we would, in talking to Longyear, hope to schedule a public hearing at the planning commission level, provided that everything's kosher, for the second meeting in June, which would be June 28th. So that's in process. We also received a site plan for Honor Credit Union. This would be the former L and N distributing building. So this is an infill development, 5,600 square foot financial institution at that former Michigan Sales / R&N distributing building. So that's, you've seen the site probably, it's been cleared, it's ready to go. They'll be utilizing, I believe, some existing utilities there. So that'll be reviewed on the 10th of May, which is our next meeting for the Planning Commission. In talking with the Road Commission and Manager Kangas, it looks like we'll be resubmitting, or not resubmitting, but altering the initial scope of our TAP grant application, provided the funding match is there, but that'll be fleshed out here, I assume, in the next few days or so. So stay tuned on that. We also did some research on the covenants for the Cornerstone Business Park in an effort to kind of decide whether or not a solar array would work on the north side of the Township Hall, the community center room. And we believe that through some creative screening that we would be able to meet their requirements. In fact, Tom Swick stopped in yesterday, and we spoke briefly about that proposal, and he indicated, you know, you work with us, we work with you. That's how it works. So that was positive. We've also transmitted the revised, thanks to Attorney Zappa and the Township Board for your comments on the Renovair's conditional proposal. So that's been transmitted to them. They let me know that they've transmitted that to their attorney. So I'm sure we may volley that back and forth once or twice more, but that is in process as well. I'll be ordering, if not a new bench, some new parts for a bench that was damaged at Lions Field. I think in talking to Andrew Wilder from Building and Grounds, that maybe a car tried to go through the park during the winter. I don't know how it got busted up, but I'll be contacting Barco, who is our park furniture supplier, see if I can get those parts. If not, we'll just order a new bench to replace that one. Andrew and I also visited this week the south side of the underpass and located a site for our last two scope items for that project, which is a park bench with a handicap accessible pad and a kiosk, which will have some information about the trails, kind of a map showing where things are at. So we'll be putting those things together once Building and Grounds gets those established in the ground. Eric's out for the rest of the week, so I've been answering the phone a lot more and just general stuff. Dunham's is proposing to have a tent sale, I think sometime in May. So I sent them off the initial temporary use permit application. Not that it needs a whole lot, but the fire department likes to know where things are, where the parking is going to be affected, etc. And then also on May 10th, as part of the Planning Commission meeting, there'll be a public hearing on a proposed family daycare land use on Brookton Road. So that's a land use that's much needed in the community. In fact, in talking with the applicant at the scheduling of the public hearing, the last agenda, I guess for every 3 children, or for every children that's out there that needs daycare, there's 3 more. So hopefully that'll go well. All the public notifications have been sent out, and the ad has been put in the newspaper. And then we also have another short-term rental application for a property in the northern part of the township up off of County Road 550, really low density residential. Shouldn't be too much of an issue, provided that the neighbors are in agreement with that. And then just the day-to-day stuff. So I know I've been seeing some, real estate signs that have been knocked down on ventures. So I've been taking pictures on my way to work and back, and just starting to catalog some of the property maintenance issues that we'll be tackling here in the upcoming weeks. So beyond that, just day-to-day stuff, getting a fairly large planning commission packet ready for the 10th. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Anything from anybody?
Have they broke ground yet on Panera Bread or the Texas Roadhouse?
They are moving earth over there, and it just started today, I believe. They had their equipment over there, but I've noticed that they've moved some dirt around as of today.
Oh, John?
I'm also aware that they're waiting on pipe materials to put in the underground work on that site. So that might cause a little bit of a delay if they don't arrive soon, but that's the most recent I know. So they're just doing some mass grading currently.
Great. Thanks, Chase. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, gang. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Okay, next up is our Public Works report. This is
Hello,
all
everyone.
good stuff.
I think you guys, I just walked to go get a drink of water. I think you were talking about the Texas Roadhouse area.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the big things that they're waiting on right now, and I guess it is in my report here, is they're waiting on their Eagle sanitary permit to put in sewer. And they are also waiting on their stormwater permit, but they do have their water permit, so they should be ready to go on that. So I think right now we're kind of waiting on permits.
Okay.
But let's start at the beginning of my report here, I guess. So for solid waste, the first Wednesday drop-off is now going. Last month, the first month that we had in April here, we did not have many people come, but we were thinking that was due to the weather. So as the weather gets nicer, we're expecting to get kind of slammed. But we do still have some of the curbs in effect that we had last year. So basically, we're doing the same thing. We're limiting, the residents to coming to 3 times a year, only to either one pickup truck load or one trailer load. So you can't have a pickup truck and a trailer; it's one or the other. And then we're only doing so many dumpsters a drop-off day here too. So we're trying to kind of keep that down and get control of it, to keep control of our budget here too. For wastewater, the Center Street generator project is still progressing. although the completion date now has been kind of pushed back, so I do need to confirm, and I did talk to some of the UPEA guys down at the water conference. Originally, we heard that the generator got pushed back to February 2024, which is outrageous. Not their fault, but I mean, it's just supply chain type issue. So we're hoping that's not the case here. So we're hoping that we're going to get it in either early or late summer or early fall, like it was originally anticipated coming in. But who knows with supply chains, the way everything are. It sounds like things are getting better for a lot of things, water related, hydrants and piping, but certain things like generators, I guess, are still way off. Back to the Texas Roadhouse, their Part 41 permit has been turned into Eagle. It's under review. We're anticipating probably another couple weeks before Eagle, makes a review of it, makes either suggestions or goes ahead and approves the permit. We will also be inspecting manholes throughout the township. So especially when the winter, spring comes with the thaw, you'll notice a lot of the manholes start getting broken up around them and stuff just from wear and tear. We're going to be going ahead and we're going to be fixing a lot of our damaged castings that we have found and trying to repatch all that up. And a lot of times, sometimes the plows will kind of hit them a little bit and break them up. And so that'll be kind of a job that'll be ongoing, that we'll be going around the township looking and trying to get those fixed up. For water, when possible, especially now that the snow's melting, we're going to try to get out there. We're going to start up our water service line inspection. Again, with our hydro excavator, we're going to hope to get the majority of those. I think they got I think 60 to 70 of them done last year. So we're going to try to do at least adding in this year. So we're definitely on track to meet our deadline, which I think we still have 2 or 3 more years on that. So we're on track to meet our deadline for that inspection, and it goes pretty well. We have also been encountering several meter failures in the last few months here. So we have some big ones that have failed, but now we've noticed that some of the small residential ones have failed. The battery life is just they have like little batteries in them. They're actually been failing prematurely. Luckily, those are all under warranty. So we just they started in a drip kind of mode here, and we're expecting it's going to keep dripping and get a little bit bigger here. So, but luckily, those are still under warranty, so we will be able to just exchange them out for a new meter. So with the UP Spring Water Conference on Escanaba, actually Rob did not go. Chad went, and I ended up going down there. And Chad did bring a sample of our water down, and there was about 10 or maybe 15 other water systems through the UP also turned some water in. I didn't really count them. I just seen all the jars sitting up there. But Marquette Township did take first in the contest, so we are officially, per Michigan AWWA, the best tasting water in the Upper Peninsula. So with that, we get a chance to go downstate and compete against the other regions. If we are lucky enough to win that one, we will be representing Michigan in the national water tasting contest. So this is the 3rd time that we've won it, and we're really proud of that. It really shows, especially for our team, our water team that we have out there working it. That's a sign that they're doing a good job, and they're doing their job, and it shows in the taste of the water. So we got some good tasting water according to AWWA, and let's hope we can do well when we go on state. Building and grounds, the staff has been working on cleaning up sidewalks, so they were out last week sweeping the sidewalks. We're going to try to get some more. I think there's a few other things that we have to sweep up, like the parking lots and stuff. We're going to try to get that done. We are also working on fixing some of the damaged grass and the divots and stuff from plowing. So you'll see them out there working on that, trying to get everything looking nice here. If it ever warms up, if we can ever grow grass here again, we'll try to get out there and get everything looking green and nice here again. So they'll be working on that for the next few weeks. And they will also be out there working on Lions Field, getting that set up ready to go here for the summer. And they're also been keeping busy, cleaning and reorganizing all of our buildings. So that's kind of an ongoing thing, but they keep busy, and they've been doing that. So we got a lot of things with spring coming between water, sewer, and building and grounds. We're going to be pretty busy here coming up, and hopefully the weather will start getting nice, and it will really help us get outside and start getting some of these things done.
Excellent.
That's it.
Not anytime soon.
Congrats on your award.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yes.
great.
Love the
Yeah,
water.
thank you, Wayne.
Love the water.
Do we
Thank
have
you.
that on the website too?
Yep.
Yeah, do we know?
Yep.
It is? Okay. So the public
Yeah, we got it
knows.
on we
What are
do
you
have it
talking
on
about?
Facebook,
You're
but
drinking your
we're gonna get our trophy. We do have our trophy right now. We'll be displaying it in the office, but we'll wait to get our little tag that they put on it. They have to get engraved, so it'll be blank for now. But then when it comes in, we'll get that tag on there and we'll have it in the office.
Okay. I do have a question for you, though. The couple items down on our agenda is to talk about North Iron Church and their cleanup day, or their help day, serve day. It's June 4th, so I didn't get a chance to catch you in the office. If you can think of anything, we're gonna talk about it among ourselves, but if there's something you need help with, they started last year by working on some of the township border signs, you know, painting some of them. I don't know where we're gonna be with the one on Grove Street, and we do have a contribution to kind of upgrade that, if they're gonna put the bottom back. If there's any other repairs, it doesn't have to just be the signs. I mean, they painted the arena for the city. They go up to the Copper Country, they're in the Sioux and Newberry. They have painters, they have artists, they have carpenters. They'll do anything. So if you can think of anything off the top of your head, otherwise, let me know in the next week or two. Talk to your crew and see what they might need help with. I don't know if we need a building painted, or, you know, it could be anything. Help at Lions Field, Schwimwood Park. Maybe the cleanup, we usually do a cleanup there every year, and I know with Mike Springer kind of retiring, he hasn't been championing that quite as much. Maybe that falls to staff then.
Yeah,
So
definitely. We can do some
kick it around.
brainstorming here, and I can get back to you.
Okay, that would be helpful. We'll see what we come up with later.
Okay, sounds good.
Any
Thanks.
questions for Lenny? Linda?
So I'm just wondering if someone can paint the lines for pickleball on the tennis court. I don't know who does that, but we talked about doing something on Community Day about pickleball, so I'm not gonna do it if there aren't lines painted. Do you know?
Yeah, I can't remember. Did we have any lines on there last year?
I don't know.
We have a pickleball court painted, but it is centered around the tennis court. If you're planning a tournament, my recommendation would be to consider hosting it on the ice rink floor using paint, or not paint, tape for lines.
I don't think we're gonna have a tournament. I'm just gonna point out that there's a pickleball court there and people might play, but if there aren't lines there, then
There are lines on the tennis
So
court.
they're painted.
For one court, not two turned perpendicular to the
Okay.
tennis court.
Okay, that's all I just needed to know.
We good? Okay, thanks Lenny, appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, attorney report. Lots of reports.
Well, it's been a fairly busy month again. We had a lot of loose ends all at once come due on the Heritage Silos Planned Unit Development, which you addressed at a meeting here a couple of weeks ago. Those documents have all been executed and delivered to the developer's attorney, and I believe they've been recorded. I've received word that they've been recorded, but I haven't actually received recorded copies back yet. We still have a couple of documents on that PUD that would include bills of sale once the water and sewer are actually completed, inspected, and operational. And that hasn't happened yet, so we don't want to accept the bill of sale until that happens, because then it becomes our issue. The Lions Field use agreement, we just visited that. It seems like not that long ago, but that was you'll recall, a 3-user group combined arrangement. That's fallen apart essentially because 2 of the groups don't want to participate as a group anymore, as groups among each other. So correspondence was sent indicating that if they want to continue to use the field, that they need to contact us and make alternate arrangements. As you also might recall, there were the contract required completion of a new batting cage and improvements on the irrigation system and some other, and the press box concession stand. None of those were completed last year. So moving forward, that's in limbo right now. The ball is in their court, so to speak, and we're waiting to hear back. And I'm assuming that that'll be fairly quickly because the time for using that is fast approaching. So we might have to put something together fairly quickly on that if we have a proposal or individual proposals. The 425 agreement for the Longyear development has been recorded with the county clerk as required and with the state of Michigan. One minor hiccup in that, we didn't especially realize that there's a little island associated with that. I don't know that it's developable, but the question arose at the state level on, does that stay with the city or is that coming to the township? And the answer to that is, if you read the legal description, it was included as coming with the township. So that's been clarified. The document has been recorded properly with the state of Michigan as well. It has to be recorded with the Secretary of State. We've done a little bit of research and discussion on the Planning Commission's role in PUD review, and that's timely because, as the zoning administrator just mentioned, there'll be another one of those coming up. But that's a very detailed review, one of the more important jobs that the Planning Commission does. So questions might come up on that because planned unit developments don't occur all that often. We've already talked about the Renovare option agreement, or Jason has, that we made the final changes that comported with this board's determinations at the last meeting. Those went out, I think, within 2 days, and Jason was going to follow up and get it to them, and he's indicated that he's already done that. So we're waiting to hear from them. This board decided not to include any of the controversial discussion points in it, so I would be somewhat surprised if they come back with any further revisions to that, but one never knows. I did review the sewer capacity study contract. That's later in your agenda here, and had no real significant input on that. It's a fairly straightforward document. And finally, on the subject of tax tribunal and assessment, we did, as of just yesterday morning, settle the AutoZone tax tribunal appeal. And I have a letter that's dictated but not to you yet explaining that. The assessor and I had reached a consensus on a reasonable range, and it's within that range. And in fact, the amount actually in dispute wasn't that large, so it would have, well, I'll leave it at that. It's settled, and it's been, a stipulation has been executed, and that's in the tax tribunal's hands at this point. Those are routinely approved, but until we have that certified consent judgment, it's not official. And I'm probably missing something or another, but that's what came to mind as I was jotting some notes down on what I've looked at in the last month.
That's a lot. You said you didn't have a problem with the OHM contract
Correct.
coming up next, or soon. There is a funny liability clause in there. I'm assuming you looked at that. That was the only question I had.
Well, there's an indemnity provision, and frequently I comment on a township can't indemnify for future contingent liabilities, and there's pretty sound case law that's been in place for a number of years. And this particular one qualifies their indemnity language with something along the lines of, to the extent permitted by applicable law. So on the one hand, it's saying we will indemnify them, but only to the extent permitted under applicable law. So my conclusion is, applicable law doesn't allow us to do that, so we don't need to modify, because we're not going to be indemnifying them, even if a claim were to arise. And then compound that with the issue that it's a $12,500 contract for a sewer study, a sewer capacity study. This would be a much more critical thing if we were talking about a sewer extension project, as we did a number of years ago on Wright Street or up Grove Street, and you've got open trenches that people can fall in or drive in or have collapse, and you've got potential personal injuries to workers and members of the public. There's not a whole lot of future contingent liability concerns on a sewer capacity contract, especially at that small amount.
I just noticed it was written differently, so I assumed
Right.
you looked at it.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for Roger? Okay, excellent, thank you. It's 6 o'clock already. We need to be out of here for the Planning Commission. We still have a few things to talk about. Do you want to put our MTA reports to the next meeting? Since we have like nothing on the
We
next
can't.
meeting?
We can do that.
Some of these things we can do rather quickly.
It's up to you. I just thought I'd throw it out because there's
What-
4 of us that need to report and I don't know how lengthy that'll be.
Depends on who of us want to talk a lot, right?
Actually, the
Jesus
planning
kills us.
commission
What?
meeting is canceled tonight.
Depends on who wants to
So
talk
we-
a
So
lot.
we do have time
yeah.
if you want.
Okay, we can keep going.
Township Association
Okay,
Conference.
that's
There's a
fine.
couple things we can,
We're not talking about any of those.
We're gonna keep going, he said.
Keep going.
We don't need to worry.
all right.
Okay, so that's our next item for conversation. 4 of us did go to the Michigan Township Association Convention in Traverse City last week, which is why our meeting is tonight instead of last Wednesday. And I want to thank the public and the board for allowing us to go. And that's one of the reasons that we like to give a report, so that the public can see the value of that. I think we all learned something, at least one thing. But I know that there's a lot more we can talk about, and I've got some notes. So who wants to go first?
Who's gonna talk the most?
Me, I've got just bullets.
Whoever wants to will go first.
Linda?
I'm not going to
Ladies
talk
first.
very much, so I'll go
Okay.
first. So, yes, I want to reiterate what Lynn said. Thank you for allowing us to attend. I attended some sessions, and I'll just read the name of the session. Excuse me, Solar Energy Regulation, why your township needs a solar ordinance. This was timely in that the Planning Commission is addressing the solar ordinance, and we'll be bringing that to the board soon, so I can bring some information to them. I also attended, excuse me, one Township Parks and Recreation, Playful, Peaceful, Popular. We're certainly, as a planning commission, looking at what parks we have out there and which ones we can add to. We're talking about a trailhead, and some of that's already come to this board, but they did give us a list of where we can look for funding for those things, and I'll share that with Jason. I attended one titled Breaking Down Barriers to Affordable Housing. Again, something really important to our township. And there was some information about some of the things that are going on in Lansing, where the money's coming from, who can apply for that money, and actually there is a website that shows who has already applied for some of that money. And so again, I'll share some of that with Jason, who's involved with the Renovar project, which is a project that is looking at affordable housing for workforce development. I attended a presentation entitled Raising Revenue in a Stagnant Economy. The interesting part is they talked about some things that we can do to raise money other than just taxes. They talked about crowdfunding. They also talked about, let's see, I have to find that. But the crowdfunding one was quite interesting because actually Nagani is doing a crowdfunding one right now, and that is online. And often there's a match to what can be crowdfunded through organizations throughout the government and the state and local level. So crowdfunding might be something we use in the future to help fund benches or, I don't know, equipment to do things, or maybe we never use it, but it was an option. The other one I attended was dual-use solar energy projects. They talked about using solar energy not just for gathering the solar energy to use in our homes and businesses, but also for pasturing animals, for growing cover crops, for growing vegetables. So that was quite interesting, even though we don't have a lot of farmland. We did have farms in the township once, and we do have land that could be used for solar energy projects, and someone just talked about it right here in the township. And why can't we put a flower garden underneath there? So that was interesting as well. So that's my report. Thank you. Now I want one of those lifesavers.
I'll go next. I've been to a number of them, and the best thing I have them is being able to talk to people from other communities and that other townships and that. It's amazing what you hear when you're sitting at coffee or lunch and that, what some of them are going through and some of them are problems they have. I look at our township, we're way above a great many of them and that. Some of the problems they're having is amazing. Embezzlement, people leaving, just getting disgusted, walking out the door, they're short people and that. It's hard to imagine things like this happening, but they are happening. And most of it's all downstate and that, more than up here. And that seemed to be who I was talking with in that. Well, I attended 3 or 4 sessions in that. One of them was from the class, it's Municipal Investment for Townships. They ran out of time. He was trying to go through everything and that tremendous amount of stuff. A couple of things was, we met with a bank, 2 banks, and they say we need to meet with our financial institutions twice a year just to talk with them and that, to see what's going on and that. Things like this here. There's so much information in these handouts that, and they did say get a yearly credit report from each financial institution to see where they're at. And quite a few people says, okay, we got it. How do we interpret it? And that. And he says, that's something else. You have to learn how to interpret all these and that. So that's kind of a real quick overview on it. They gave an act, Public Act 1943, Act 20 amended, which talks about investing surplus funds, duties of the township treasurer, best practices and that. They went into detail, and that's the problem they had. They just plain ran out of time going through everything and that. The gentleman knew what he did, said what he had, and he says, contact me with any questions you want and that, and we'll go for that forward on that. So that was on the class. I've been to a couple sessions from class, Michigan class and that. They do a lot of investing for a lot of townships within the state and that. And I'm not at the point where I want to work with them. We're still can handle most of the stuff locally, and we can do it pretty well locally and that. Part of the reason is individual in the back, she says, what do we got? I got $500 million back here. How do we handle it? I'm sitting there with 4 or 5 million, 6 million, and someone in front. She says, right now I got about $18 million sitting in the fund that I got to do something. And what am I going to do? I'm sitting there. I'm way off the end, trying to figure out how to handle all this stuff, and they're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in that coming into there that they have to work with. So, and
No tax tribunal in that community, I guess.
I don't know what it is, but I was not the other ones. Some of the other smaller ones that were there, they're just kind of shaking their head. Yeah, we're sitting there with $3, $4, $5 million in here. They're talking about 500 million, something like that. And how you handle it, and that, how you invest it, how you keep track of it, and that. And one said, we got all this dollars. It's all there. I'm concerned with how do I move it fast enough out of this as I'm collecting the money. So that's another problem they had. And I can relate that here because we get our dollars in. The biggest one is in December. We get all those dollars coming in. We have to move this money as fast as we can, but it takes time to do it all. And that we're moving into the bank, then we got to distribute it And we do it every, I think it was between 10 to 15 days, we get it out of the door. But you still got all this dollars sitting in the bank and that. We gotta make sure we got covered, we're insured and everything else and that. You get to the point, you get a little scared after a while and that.
Sounds like we're doing everything right, though, compared to some.
So far we are, and one of the questions was, with all those dollars coming in, they indicated that these big international, big banks and that, there should be no problem. They have enough collateral behind them to handle it and that too. You work with them, you get them in and out as fast as you can, so you should not have a problem with that. So, I just said they're looking at big dollars, and to me, we got big dollars here, but nothing compared to what they're talking about. So, things like this, that was class and that. And they come up once in a while for the Michigan Treasurers Association up here in Marquette. So I've attended a couple of their sessions and listened to them and that too. So, then I went one on advanced financial management, on budgeting and that. This was interesting until I realized what was going on. They were talking about a software product. The undertone was they're trying to push this one software product and that. So I was trying to pull out what was useful for me in that, but a lot of it was on the software product. We got BS and A here. And to me, right now, that's kind of the ladder in the townships at this point in time, and not going to something else in that. So it was good listening to a lot of things that's going on in that. Talking about long-term budget concepts, long-term planning. It kind of reinforces some of the things you're doing, monitoring the budget, things like this, forecasting and that. So it provided some more information to think about in that too. The last one I'm going to talk about was probably the PFAS. That was an interesting one. It started out kind of quiet, and did it get interesting towards the end in that. When they started talking about PFAS and what it all does in that. One of the comments was, we all have it in our body. There's no already, it's there. It's been there for years and that. And they said the only way you can get rid of it is it takes 5 years. And someone says, okay, 5 years, but okay, that means we can't do anything you're talking about, otherwise they're gonna get it back again and that too. But they listed a tremendous amount of places where it's at. It's in everything you think of. It was in Tide soap, and the Tide finally got rid of it and that. Car washes and washing machine, you name it, it's all over. And everything you do and that. So it gets a little scary after a while. I brought up about, what about these companies that made this forever chemical? There's a great many of them that are being sued right now. And what I said, well, that's fine, but you're not talking about millions or billions of dollars. You're talking about trillions of dollars when you really look at the cost. And I said, all these businesses are going to go out of business. And then what's going to happen? A lady across the aisle says, yes? Think about who's going to make the money on these. And then most of us, we kind of looked at it, she said, the law firms protecting these companies and that. They're the ones that are going to do it and that. But it was really difficult to sit there and not really get involved in deep with a lot of the stuff and that. And one of the monitors at the sessions, there's one always by the back door. She raised her hand, you know, we're going to have to raise our solid waste fees by at least $20 to $30. And I looked at it, I said, we're only talking about $5 or $10. I don't know what they're talking about. But she says, that's what it amounts to. The cost of solid waste because of this is going to go way through the roof in that, and no one is covering it in that. And then the discussions really got blown out. Everyone got involved with it at that point in time, because they're all concerned with it. And there is a committee in the state that's looking at everything at this point in time. But my comment was, you're about 10 years late at this point. So those are the three main ones that I went to that I want to bring up and that too at this point in time. That PFAS is one that scared me more than anything, because it's there. One other thing I forgot. The vaccinations that your kids get, they said because of the PFAS attaches to the actual, whatever they put into the body attaches to that,
To the vaccine?
to the vaccines. Rather than one vaccine, they may have to take 2 or maybe 3 of them because it's being degraded because of this and that. And we're just kind of looking at it and saying, wow, this is something no one's ever said on anything like this here. It's very interesting.
Well, that's the $3.8 million project that solid waste is working on
Yeah.
now. Is how
Yeah.
to dispense some of that.
One example, there was going to put a solar farm in a farm downstate. They bought some land from a farmer, big, to put it up, and they were testing it. And they came up with PFAS in there, and they couldn't figure out why. There's nothing around it anywhere. The only thing I can think of was the sludge from the wastewater plants they put on at some point in time. It's there in the land at this point. So, the example they gave was just scary after a while. So the question I had is that I'm looking at all this, looking at my age, I'm just wondering how many of my kids and grandkids are going to have the opportunity to get to my age when you look at all these things that are happening. And someone says, yeah, you get this under control, what else is coming down the pipe that they don't even know about yet? So that was probably the best one for the information. It was not that well attended too, but there was an awful lot of information there too, so that's enough.
Wow, that's great. John, you want to go next?
I'll do my very best to be as brief as possible, not to make you think that I didn't learn anything. It's just, I think we all had 6 different breakouts, and I attended the same one once with Ernie, same one once with Lynn. Linda and I didn't cross paths other than when it was time to go back to the motel because we all traveled in the same van. So I appreciate the fact that she was able to attend some of those, actually all of you, because there's no way we could have hit all of them, even if we didn't double up on a couple of them. So the first one I attended was human resource related, titled, "Oh No You Don't, You Can't Fire Me." And that one actually got pretty heated right off the bat, first thing in the morning on the first day. The people in that room were trying to figure out, without paying their attorney, how to fire a bad employee. I learned a new tool that I hope I never have to use, and that's called a last chance agreement, something I wasn't familiar with. It's a tool you can use instead of a personal improvement plan, a PIP, which I think most of you are familiar with. Kind of a neat idea, something that I'll keep in the back of my brain in the event something ever happens. But the common theme that everyone seemed to take away from that one was bad employees will fire themselves. And we've heard that a million times. The second one I attended was Building Michigan's Rural Economy. That was presented by Sarah Lucas, who used to be the executive director of the Lake Superior Community Partnership. And I was curious to see what kind of progress her new office has made. She has a budget and staff, and they are prepared to help small communities put funding packages together or seek the various funding mechanisms that are available. I think that's great for those real small communities. We have plenty of staff that's experienced to understand most of what's available, but then again, there's a lot more funding sources out there currently than there ever has been before. So just knowing the resource is important. And she also understands the region, so that's very important as well. The second one, or the third one I attended on Wednesday was titled Keep Calm and Carry On. And that is a presentation that I'm sharing with our attorney currently. It was presented by a panel of 3 people, but it really was focused on dealing with the unrest in our society today and how that impacts people in our positions in governmental buildings, elections, encounters at the front desk with angry taxpayers, that kind of thing. I would suspect that those issues are greater in more populated areas than they are here, but they're real, and it's something that we need to be very aware of, because there are folks out there that will come in intending to intentionally provoke you. So being prepared to deal with it in a calm manner is a big deal. I have a wick that gets short at times. I think we all do. We all have our hot button topics. But it was a good reminder from a legal perspective about hopefully keeping your cool when things get interesting. The other part of that was, what's the limit on free speech? So kind of an interesting discussion, and now I'm getting longer-winded than I intended to be. Second day, I had a couple of road sessions. One was where the rubber meets the road, and I think that's the one that Lynn and I were both in together. MTA lead attorney Rob Thal did the presentation on it. It was very interesting, especially when you start hearing some of the questions from townships in other counties that are dealing with far worse situations with their road commission than we ever will. We're very fortunate to have the relationship we do with our road commission, even when we don't always agree. I think Marquette County is doing pretty well with who we have. Road relations, stay in your lane. That was another good one, actually almost the opposite perspective, but it came from the road commission side on how you work together with them. And I thought it was a really good discussion, and it reinforced what I think we are trying to do here. The final one that I was involved in kind of got back to the same type of story as the Keep Calm and Carry On. It was providing a safe township workplace, something that I need to be familiar with as the person in charge of human resources. I do have to make sure our employees are safe when they get here. Again, I think we've done a really good job of ensuring that the workspace is protected within reason. No, we maybe don't have bulletproof glass yet, but we have locked doors. Only those with the right key can get through it unless they're invited in. We've added the partitions at the front counter. But we also need to be aware of mental wellness these days. That was a big one that was talked about. Recognizing the signs, something that none of us, or most of us, are never trained for. But we have to deal, we're all gonna have to deal with it eventually. I appreciate the opportunity to go to the training, and I also appreciate the fact that I didn't get criticized too bad for my chauffeur abilities.
No, you spoiled us. Thanks. Well, I looked through the book real quick. There were 54 classes we could have attended in the 4 days. 3 days, actually. Yeah, 3 days. And one of them I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 classes I would like to have gone to, and I had to narrow it down to one. So that's why we ended up just doing, half a dozen apiece, because there were just too many at one time. But one of the main things I wanted to talk about down there was visit with legal at some point. No offense, but I wanted to see from MTA's viewpoint. I went to the Foster Swift luncheon, and they usually give you a box lunch too when you sign up for that. It's by RSVP. And you can ask any questions ahead of time or not, but I wanted to know if we could levy a corporate tax on our businesses to make up for the loss of the tax tribunal. And they said no, without even thinking twice. We don't have the authority to do that. And I thought that was the answer, but that didn't work. What they did start out with was that the township board has authority to determine our destiny. I thought that was pretty good. We have the authority to determine our destiny, our collective destiny. But I also did ask him about the DDA, whether we could offer or levy an operating millage, and we can. I wasn't sure if we could, if we had to have a project, you know, because everybody's been saying project, you have to have a development plan and all that. And we don't. We can do, you know, half a mil, a third of a mil, or whatever, just for cash, basically. I don't remember who I was with. They talked about liquor license control. Was that John?
I was in that.
Was that one?
Yeah.
And we kind of went, we have control over our liquor licenses? That's what they said. So we might have to talk about that at some point.
Yeah.
That was kind of interesting.
We've delegated that to the sheriff's department.
We delegated it?
They do the enforcement on it.
We can write something into the contract.
Right.
Of
Oh.
some type.
Yeah, and I don't know what that would be or could be, but it just surprised me that we had input. So I wrote it down. Oddly enough, we've talked about this before, but one of the topics, and I can't remember exactly which breakout session, was the importance of having a good dais. They really recommend half of a rectangle for your board table. And they said if you can't do that, at least go out to the V. So I think if we get some excess money at some point again, if we hadn't used all of our ARPA money, that might have been a good thing to invest $5,000 in or something, to see about moving.
We might have almost exactly that left.
Really? That's what they said it would take. Because the issue is the carpet and the electrical. They'd have to do some research. If we could just move it out.
You mean I wouldn't have to keep
You wouldn't
kicking
have
John
to.
under the table to sit back?
So I wanted to write that down. So one of the breakouts was that I almost always try to go to is Capital Insights. Judy Allen gives an update, a current update on what's happening in Lansing and what to watch out for. Sand and gravel is coming back again. They want to take away our local control. Short-term rentals is coming back again. They want to take away local control.
What was your first one?
Sand and gravel. Now, we don't have issues really with either of those right now because we've got good partners with the sand and gravel side of it, and the short-term rentals, planning has kind of taken care of it, so we're lucky. But some of these people downstate are just having terrible time. Elections, we've got those under control, right? I mean, we got the best clerk, I think. Personal property tax is going to be replaced with a corporate tax, so that will save Treasury a little bit of time and effort and money. I thought that was good. It's possible we could get an reimbursement on the veteran exemption that we now have in place. I think there were 15 or 20 veterans who were exempt from property tax. This Board of Review, which I don't have a problem with that, but we'd lose that money. We don't get it back from the state, but the state is telling us we have to do it. So that's one possibility. There, speaking of solar, there is a 30% discount right now with a company that we have seen, so John was gonna look into that once he found out about the covenants here, which it sounds like we took care of. There could be an increase in the constitutional revenue sharing this year, a one-time blast and then an increase on the base. And then in the first 100 days of the legislature, they enacted 10 public acts already, which involve blight, civil rights, collective bargaining, prevailing wage, housing, economic development, and a few other ones, those mostly the same. And Michigan is the only state in the country without a statewide septic code. How about that? Without a septic code. We have no code enforcement or anything on our septic
It's
systems.
all at the county level in Michigan. So the question is, do you want it to stay local or do you want it to be taken by the state?
I want this one local and this one state and this one county.
Oh, shit.
So that was just from Lansing. Solid waste, briefly, I'm just doing points. Michigan was the first state in the country with recycling and curbside pickup. So I thought, there's a good one thing, you know, to hear something good. But the flip side of that is 22% of our trash is from out of state. 22% of all the trash we have in our landfills collectively is not from Michigan. They didn't say where it was from. I think some of it's from
Oh.
Canada.
Some of our dump sites encourage it from Canada.
True, yeah, it's true, I've heard that. And just
Then
so.
they complain about it filling up.
Just a little thing, one of the fees, when you transfer a car, and I don't know if that's on new cars too, but it says a title transfer fee funds the township's ability to clean up tires, which I thought was kind of interesting. So when you transfer a vehicle, there's a fee in there, and it goes to the solid waste. Oh, roads was the number one thing. I was invited to sit in on a session with the MTA director. He was trying to pull all 300 charter townships together in a room. So there might have been 40 people in that room, and then some of them were multiple people from each township. So we might have had 10 or 15 charters, I don't know. So it was gonna be just kind of a session to just talk, and he had a couple things. I saw some stuff in the news, and the supervisor was there in the room talking about the factory that was going in and a couple other things. But anyway, it ended up being roads. Somehow we got on to talking about roads, seasonal roads. It was amazing. A lot of the conversations I had, everything came back to roads. And to follow up on John's, I went to one called Express Yourself, and it talked about breathing and eye contact and body movements and your voice characteristics. So 55% of your discussion, conversation, presentation is physical. When somebody's looking at you or listening to you, or not listening to you. 38% of it is your voice. So it's not even that, voice isn't even that important. Eye power is what's left. But they kept saying about breathing. What do you want your audience to think when you're talking? What do you want them to feel when you're talking? What do you want them to do when you're talking? Don't react to something emotional. Control your emotions, show your respect, make your decisions at the board level based on your strategic plan and your master plan. Everything you do should be based on those two things, your strategic plan and your master plan. So that's all I had from the sessions, but out of those, I came up with this question for you. I'd like to consider asking Jen Hill to come and do a work session with us. She's been asking me, and her associate's been asking me, when can we get together? So I was trying to think, I wanted to have it more structured so it wouldn't waste either of our time. And I came up with 4 things that I thought we could talk about. Specifically roads, but also the part about how some of the road gas tax money goes into the general fund. And I don't know if she knows that or not, but how can we get that back into the roads? That would be one thing I'd like to have her bring to the legislature to talk about. The other thing would be to have the township board level with staggered terms and no party affiliation. That wasn't talked about at MTA this time, and I didn't get a chance to talk to the person I wanted to about that. But she could bring that up. Jen could bring it up. And then the local control idea, especially mining and short-term rentals. Those are going to be the big ones that I'll talk about. So if we can at least impress on her, local could mean county too. It doesn't have to just be township, at least. And then one more thing came up. This is my last. In the platform that, if you remember, we agreed to this in November, I think. This is their policy platform. I gave it to you a couple times. And the last one on here says, under assessment and taxation, to allow an option for a local excise tax for the purpose of providing public recreational facilities and/or public safety expenses related to tourism. So I saw this at the time, and when this came up, then I kind of earmarked it. So I asked Neil Sheridan, the director, about this, and I said, Sarah Cambenzi talked about this at one point, and it was because of some taxing issues that they were having in Alger County a couple of years ago. And I asked him if that's what this was, and he said, no, this is something different. So I caught Judy Allen then, right before, in fact, the Friday meeting was, or Thursday meeting was going on, and asked her about this, and she said, it is Sarah Cambenzi's idea. So what would happen if this goes through the legislature, and these are the things that MTA is gonna push with the legislature this year, okay? This is their policy platform. So if this were to come up, what it means is we would put on the ballot a question for the public as to whether an excise tax should be placed on hotels. Now, they could expand it to maybe gas stations and grocery stores, I'm not sure, because it would be a tourism tax. And that's what,
Part-time rentals.
possibly, because they're not taxed through the travel bureaus now. So I guess I'd like to have that conversation with her and find out how that would affect. Neil said that this would be a tax on the public, and I took that to mean our people. But Judy said that's not the case. It would be from the recreation side. And then I would want to know, where's that money going? Is the state going to take a cut, like they take a cut of everything? But would it go to the fire departments for the EMS and for their services for recreation? That's the idea. And would it go to the travel bureau? Would it go to the county, 911? Because it's supposed to be for the increased recreational tourists burden on the local community. Kind of involved, but I'd want to have that conversation with her. So if it's okay with you, I think a work session would be better than to take up board time. And we could, it'd be recorded anyway. But if that would be all right with you, I'd like to try to get a hold of her.
You can get a hold of her, and we have a meeting next week and that, and you can bring up what kind of response you get at the meeting and that thing, so.
Okay, if that's all right with you guys. Okay, that's all I had. No, that's a big report with 4 of us going. It's a good thing 7 of us didn't go. Okay, community linkage. How are we doing on time? 6:35. That was John. Okay. Okay, North Iron Church. I talked about this briefly. Serve Day is going to be June 4th. Just from me briefly talking to Lenny, do you guys have any ideas? Is there something you think off the top of your head? I told this lady I would get back to her, of course. I didn't expect an answer tonight.
Why don't we talk to Lenny and then we have a meeting next week, if they can come back to us something next week
Okay.
too, so.
And if you think of anything in the meantime, let me know, or text me or email me or something. Okay. A couple other things I wanted to share on that too. You probably saw, and I did email you, the letter to the editor, the response that I sent in, that was in yesterday's paper, talking about taxes again. If you didn't, it's in yesterday's Mining Journal. It'd be online too. I did attend the Marquette County Road Commission meeting Monday night after we signed our letter of support for the Forestville Road project. And I did speak in support of it, of course, before I reserved time on the items so that the discussion was before they talked about it. There was a representative there from Invest UP. His name is Vince Nystrom. He was there because Marty Fattanti was out of commission, and he was representing him. So he also supported it. I reminded him that these could be federal funds and state funds. I said if we need to get a hold of Senator Peters' office to do a letter of support, we could do that, because they've already told me they'll provide one. We can get a hold of Jen Hill and have her do something if they want more information. So they ended up voting to support the project. Before they voted, Chair Roberts said that he wanted to make sure that the commission, I don't remember what his exact word was, remembered or recognized or focused on the fact that the bypass is their chosen option. And he doesn't want that to disappear. And then they voted and he voted yes. So there was only 3 of the 5 there. They also asked, and this will fall to the clerk then, if they could cancel our joint meeting on 5/17 because they want to be able to meet collectively when we have an answer on some of this. So, Randy, if you wouldn't mind canceling that meeting?
No, not at all.
Oh, didn't mind canceling it?
You can cancel it.
Okay.
And thank you for taking it to them and passing on our recommendation as a board.
Welcome. Anything else you're hearing from the public? We haven't been here for a few days, but nothing else? Okay. Let's consider the Wade Trim invoice. Go ahead, John.
We've all had detailed information on this effort that was put forth. We all knew ahead of time when we recommended the hiring of, or the approval of employing the engineering advice of Wade Trim and his organization. I think that we've all welcomed what we received and appreciate the detail that he went to. And I think that we should all be welcoming at this point, recommending that he get paid for this, and I will make that motion. I know it's early, but I recommend approval of the engineering invoice from Wade Trim for the professional service performed, and it was very professional, at the Forestville Road Wright Street intersection in the amount of $26,098.38.
Support.
Okay. John, what do you want to add?
All I want to say is I'm very impressed with how fast they worked under pretty tight deadlines, and we were still a month behind what the original deadline was, and not because of them, just the bureaucratic process that has to follow. Their scope or their contract was not to exceed 30,000, so we actually got less than their total billed.
Okay, any questions?
So that's their total bill. They have on the bill total remaining, but that doesn't mean they get to spend it. Does it?
They get to bill us up to $30,000 for the work they do. If there's something else that they had to do after this bill went out, we may still see one, but I'm not aware of any at this point.
Okay. So that's just sitting there saying that.
Any other questions? Okay, oh, you want a roll call?
I think we should have a roll call. I think this is worth it.
That's fine. It's requested, we can do it.
Okay, trustee Marks,
Yes.
treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
trustee Kidda,
Yes.
trustee Winslow,
Yes.
trustee Everson,
Yes.
clerk Rattari is yes, and supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Now we're down to Lenny's sewer capacity project. Oh, he stayed on the line. Oh my gosh, are you dedicated?
I'm listening the whole time.
Did you learn anything? We talked a lot.
Yes, I did.
We talked.
So basically, this is just for a sewer capacity analysis. So this is kind of, we need to have this done with all the anticipated growth or the potential growth that we're looking at having. We need to get some data in exactly, what is our capacity of our sewer now? How much of that capacity are we currently using? How much left do we have? If we don't have enough, it'll give us the data to kind of start figuring out different ways of where we can start adding capacity or figuring out different ways to get the sewer out of Marquette Township. So this is going to be a real necessary data type of study where we'll be able to get some really good information, and it'll help us kind of start formulating ideas and things that we might need to do in the future, especially if we do get a bunch more growth in the Forestville area, in that area, or even on the US 41 corridor. So this is mainly going to look at the sewer main on both sides of US 41, and it's also going to look at Wright Street and the force main for Wright Street. So we'll get an idea of what all these sewers, what they can do. So it is for a not to exceed $12,400 or $12,400. The only thing I would change is on the recommended motion, I forgot to put the authorize the supervisor to sign the proposal.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal from OHM for a sewer capacity analysis in the amount not to exceed $12,400 and authorize the supervisor to execute the agreement.
Support.
Okay, motion and support. John?
I just want to say, we're already working with OHM on the water side, but that's system-wide relative to the water treatment plant purchase consideration. And they have the resources to do these kind of studies for us, and I'm sure the findings will be comprehensive.
That's what I was gonna ask really is, if they hadn't finished the water analysis, how would they have time to do this? But apparently they're big enough. Or different resources too, probably.
There's a lot of moving parts that impact the completion. And I would be very careful about suggesting, at short notice especially, why it's not done yet. I do think the scope has really evolved quickly, and that's also why the proposal you're considering tonight doesn't look just at the sewer on the north side of the highway, it also looks at the sewer on the south side of the highway, because they are both limited in capacity, and our growth is going to impact both of them.
Good. Any questions?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lenny. Thanks for waiting.
No problem.
Should have moved that up, I guess. Planning Commission, do you want to add anything?
No, I think Jason did a marvelous job. Thanks, Jace.
Yes. Recreation Committee, do we have anything?
Did not meet.
Okay. That was easy. And we don't have any public. We don't even have the deputy. Any announcements?
Yes, Lynn, I do have a few.
Okay.
Okay, so the timeline for the May special election next week is coming up. Friday will be the last day that I can mail out an absentee ballot, so if you need a ballot in the mail, get them in the next few days. Saturday, the township office will be open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. to give out absentee or take absentee ballots in or register you to vote if you are not registered. So that's Saturday. Monday, we can still issue absentee ballots up to 4 p.m., but they can't leave the building. So if you can request one, you can vote here and then turn it back in. And Tuesday, the election polls open at 7 a.m., close at 8. That's it?
8 p.m.
8 p.m., yeah.
Anything else? Any other announcements? Okay. John, manager's report.
Anyone want to hear me talk anymore tonight? I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have. You don't have a written report from me as I was at the MTA conference last week.
Thank you.
So catching up is crazy this week, hey?
It's been a busy week. I discovered when I'm not in the office for a week, somebody wasn't doing my job for me.
Well, I'm your backup technically, but couldn't help you there.
That being said, everything was still standing when I got back, so I guess it's okay if I'm not here for a couple of days.
We got a pretty awesome staff.
We do.
And thank you for being our chauffeur. It worked out. I want
You
to say
can
that.
you can thank Jim Nankervis for that.
Well, he provided the.
Well, he's the one that signed me up.
Okay, yeah, it worked out great. Appreciate it. You want to do our motions?
Okay, first motion was to approve the consent agenda as presented. That was approved. The second motion was to approve the regular agenda as approved, and that was, or as presented, and that was approved. Third motion was to approve the Wade Trim invoice. That was approved. And the fourth motion was to approve the OHM sewer capacity analysis proposal, and that was approved.
I've already started the next agenda. I don't remember what's on it, so I'm sure we'll have a few more things. It's not going to be much, though, for just a week later. So reminder, next Wednesday, the 3rd of May, 5:30. That's when we're back together again.
Normal schedule.
Yeah. Any comments?
You want,
I didn't say anything.
For the record,
oh, no,
I
no.
call in at 2:22 to ask that I was excused from the last meeting, for the record.
For the
But
record.
I do thank you all for waiting. Lynn said 15 minutes for me, but I couldn't make it. I apologize.
We'll blame Verizon, because I got your text at 5:46, saying that you wouldn't be here at 4 o'clock.
But you saw when I sent it, right?
Yeah, I saw your
Yeah.
phone, 222.
2:22. Well, that's Verizon.
Can't, when, technology's great when it works.
Yes.
What other comments? Anything?
We are
John.
board member comment?
Yes, sir.
Is that where we are?
We are.
You're all done. Our supervisor has established, I think, to the benefit of this township, a good rapport with our state elected officials. I know you frequently talk to them as a group almost. I think I'd like them as a unit to kind of explore if we can test the waters as to maybe taking a new tack at the box store
Debacle.
Well, that, but I mean, I'd like to suggest that we could ask them if it's not possible to consider a state law that would require that no property owner would be able to insure their property for more than the current state taxable value established by the tax tribunal. I think that would be one way to approach this in a different way than because we've had no success in the past. And I would ask them to start to talk about that at the state level where they can make that work. We know that the tax tribunal members are appointed by the governor and we haven't gotten anywhere with that. We know that the township representatives that we have been reluctant to pursue that over the past years in any way at all. Not this point, but they don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So we can't expect them to do anything either. But we could get, perhaps, our state representatives as a group to pursue this question, is to disallow them from taxing property at a high value and paying what they are able to obtain a price that's much lower by the tax tribunal. I think that makes sense to most people who really can't understand the complexity that we face and we had presented to us today. It's very awkward, but it seems unfair, and I think most people, most residents who pay taxes would see the wisdom of saying, how can you insure your property for a high value and pay taxes at a lower one? And I'd like to ask that you do that.
That's a good point.
I know that's come up before, that and the mortgage, you know, if your mortgage is $10 million, that's what the bank says.
Why is it that Indiana or Illinois or wherever got it done in 6 months and Michigan can't get it done in 10 years?
But
Somebody's getting paid under the table.
It's the Chamber of Commerce supporting businesses, that's what they've said.
And I respectfully ask you to do that.
Yep, I'll add it to the list. What else? Any other comments? Yes.
I want to remind our residents that dogs are not to be unleashed and that people are to pick up after their animals. Our young children are on their bikes now, they're all over, and that is certainly a source of disease/illness for people. So clean up. It is against the law to not have your dog under control.
Leashed.
Well, I'd like to
Even
say
actually in your
leashed.
own yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. What else?
I would like to make a final motion.
I might just remind you that our assistant chief is retiring, and his last day is May 1st, and that next Friday.
Cake and ice cream at 1:30.
Okay.
I thought Dan was gonna announce that, Chief Dan. That's why I haven't said anything, because he said he was gonna take care of it, but he didn't end up being here tonight. Maybe he was gonna announce it tonight.
Now you're up.
Okay, now I'd like to make that one and final motion that we
I'll support.
adjourn.
Okay. What time is it? 6:58.
We were lost
We are
on
adjourned.
Monday.
No.
No, but it's nice too.